guys, it's Ty and welcome back to my channel. So today I'm going to be talking about Ordinary Monsters by J and Miro. This is going to be a spoiler-free review. So this is a adult historical fantasy. It is the first book in the Talent trilogy. And let me just tell you guys, it took me a long time to get through this one. So I started this at the end of November and I didn't finish it until sometime in January, like the middle of January, and I have not been this conflicted over a book in a long time, but I still right now don't know whether or not I actually like this book. But I have this review kind of broken up into different parts. So I'm going to start off with a basic summary over what the book is about. I'm going to kind of go into some other things about the book, like the characters, kind of go into how they played a part in this book. And then I'm going to go over my likes and dislikes and then let you guys know at the end whether or not I think I'm going to read the rest of this trilogy. So we are going to go ahead and get started. So like I mentioned in the beginning, this is a historical fantasy and this story primarily takes place over in England in the 1800s. And so we have these two characters by the name of Alice and Colton, and their job is to go and grab these children who have these supernatural abilities. So they have some sort of power, and so they go and grab these kids. These kids can be from all over the world. So someone tells them that, hey, we have this kid, we know that they have these powers, you need to go grab them and bring them back. So they go grab these kids. They're supposed to bring them back over to Scotland, I believe, where this institute called Carndale is located. So at the beginning of the story, they are supposed to go pick up this boy by the name of Charlie, who is over in Mississippi. And Charlie is this biracial boy. He is housed over in Mississippi, but he is not being treated very well over in Mississippi. Mind you, it is the 1800s. He's biracial. He has the ability to regenerate. So anytime he's hurt, his body will regenerate and he is healed. So he has the power to heal really quickly. The only thing with that though is he still feels pain. So even though he can heal really quickly, he still feels everything. So when they go pick him up, they learn that he basically has been abused by the white men that have been holding him captive. And so we kind of get some backstory about him. But while they are over there trying to pick him up and take him back over to England so they can get him back over to the Institute, they learn that there is another person that they need to go pick up over in Illinois. Colton decides that he's going to go ahead and grab Charlie. Alice is going to go ahead and get little Marlo. So Marlo is a little bit younger than Charlie. I think Charlie is in his teens and Marlo is younger. So I think Charlie is like 16. Marlo is like 8 or 9. Marlo has the ability to shine. So he can turn like this bluish color, and he has the ability to, when he gets kind of angry, he can touch someone and he can like make them, like their skin kind of like burn and boil. They can turn into like this waxy substance. And he has the ability to, if you're hurt, he can take your pain away and then project it onto himself. Alice goes ahead and goes to get Marlo. While she is there, she realizes that she is being pursued by something or someone. So when they all make it back over to England at Carndale at this institute, they realize that something is after them and they don't know why. So the whole focus of the story is we learn about these kids. We learn why it is that some of them have these powers. We learn about this Institute Carndale, the importance of it. We learn the ins and outs of this institute. And then we learn what it is that is actually after them and why. So that is the basic premise of this story. A really big part of this story and what keeps coming up, obviously, is the institute itself. We learn a lot about Carndale and why the kids are brought there and what their powers are actually called. I don't think it's a spoiler. The trilogy is named after it, but any of the children that has any sort of power or supernatural powers, whatever it is that you want to name it, they are considered a talent. So Charlie and Marlo, because they have these quote unquote powers, they are considered to be a talent. So we learn what those talents are, what they're classified as. We know that there are 5 different categories of talents. And then when the children go to Carndale, they are assigned different instructors so that they can learn not only about the school, but also learn about their talent and everything that they are able to do with their talents. So that's everything that they are able to do at this institute. We also have some other characters that are heavily involved in the story. So we know that we have Charlie and Marlo that are the 2 main talents in this story, but we also have a few other talents that join them throughout this story. So we have one that is called Kameko, and she is what you would call a dust worker. So she has the ability to like manipulate dust. Then we have one that's called Oscar. Now, to be fair, I never really understood what the heck Oscar could do. He has what you would consider like this flesh-eating giant that is always around him that can protect him from danger. His giant's name is called Leminion. And from my understanding, Oscar is able to make this giant himself. He is able to construct his own flesh-eating giants. That's what I got from that. And then we have the other talent that we get really familiar with throughout the story, and her name is Ribs. Her real name is Eleanor, but everyone calls her Ribs, and she is able to be invisible. And then we have the director of Carndale. His name is Henry Bergast. He is the one that knows the ins and outs of this institute. He is the one that everyone goes to for everything, and he is the one that everyone puts their trust into. And then we have Margaret Harrogate. She is like the face of Carndale, so also known as like the representative of Carndale. She is the one that will kind of tell Colton and Alice which talents to go and get, and she is the one that will kind of, before the children get to Carndale, she does the assessment of the children before they go to the actual institute. So those are the main characters that we kind of follow. This is a fairly simple story. We are just following some kids that have some powers, and they're at this institute. They're learning about their powers. They are trying to figure out who or what it is that is after them. They are trying to figure out who it is that they can trust at this institute, and basically what is going on. That is the overall plot of this story. I think this story is really sad, and I didn't think about that until almost the end of the story. When you really sit down and think about it, and you really sit and think about all of these characters, they all have a really sad background. When these kids are picked up right before they go to this institute, they are probably at the lowest of the low point in their lives. They are usually struggling. They are going from home to home. They are out on the streets. They are struggling. They have something traumatic is going on in their background. And going to Carndale is a safe space for them. And it's not only the children, it's also their caretakers. Something tragic has happened in these people's lives. This is a sad story. And on the outside, it seems like it would be cool. Oh my gosh, these kids, they have powers. They're going to this school where these other kids have powers. But it's a sad story because they all have these really tragic backstories. And it's just something that it didn't even click with me, like I said, until I was almost done with the story. And I was sitting here like, this is really sad. All of these people are sad. And so when you're sitting here and you're trying to figure out, well, who's the bad person? Who am I supposed to be mad at? Who should I be empathizing with? Like, I don't know. I don't know if I can really be mad at anybody because everybody has had a rough life. And so can you really be that mad at anybody for the choices that they're making? And so I think that was the point that the author was trying to make at the end of this. So when you go into this, I think looking back on this, you will pick up on how like sad and dark the tone of this book really is. So I want to go ahead and just start with the positives on the things that I really liked about this book. I really liked the overall concept. I love anything that has to do with children and powers. That's just something that will always hook me, always intrigue me, always will get me to want to pick up the book and read it. I really liked our two main talents, Charlie and Marlo, and I liked them for different reasons. One, I liked Marlo because you have this little boy, he's about 8-9 years old. I just envision him being like the sweetest cuddly little thing, because everybody that comes into contact with him seems to love him right away. His power is interesting. He just seems to want to be loved. And I think that's why everybody gets so attached to him. He just has a way to just pull you in and just make you want to love him, because I think he just wants to be loved because he hasn't had that. And you would figure that out pretty early on with his backstory. And then I liked Charlie because I feel for Charlie. I said it in the beginning, you know, he's this biracial kid. Both of his parents were not around when he was growing up. He was being abused out in Mississippi. You know, he was not treated right. And so he is fearful of everybody. He's not trustful of anybody because of what he went through. And so when he meets Marlo and they form this bond and this relationship, I was here for that. And it's just something that touched my heart. It was almost like a brotherly relationship that they had formed. And I loved to see it. You know, he was very protective of Marlo. And it was nice to see that Charlie could finally start to trust somebody, because you could see why he would not want to trust anybody. So I loved the bond that Charlie and Marlo started to form throughout this book. I also really loved the beginning of this story, because when I first picked this up, I was hooked. Probably for like, I don't know, like 50-ish. I would say maybe like the first 100 pages. I was probably like hooked in the story. Hooked with learning about our characters. Our first main characters that we learned about was Alice and Colton and Charlie and Marlo and Mrs. Harrogate, and learning about Carndale. I loved all of that and just being so immersed into this world. I was freaking hooked into this story, and I was actually reading it pretty fast. It was after that that I started to not pick up this book as fast. And that's when we're going to go ahead and get into my dislikes for this book. I started to feel like so much of this was repetitive. So the book is broken up into different timelines, which is fine. So we would jump from like 1887 to 1882, and then 1873 to back to 1882, and kind of explaining what was happening into the past and then back to the present. And that's fine. But what I did not like was sometimes they would tell us what was happening in the past, in the present, but then we would go back to the past for them to tell us what they just referred to in the present. I have no idea if that made sense, but they would tell us the same thing twice. So I don't know if other people picked up on that, or if it was just something that bothered me. But I mean, even though they would tell us something that happened in the past, maybe they would just give us like little snippets, and then they would really go into detail once we got the past chapters. But I still didn't need to see it twice. And I think that added to the length of the book, because the book is not well over, but it's a little over 650 pages. And I don't think it needed to be that long. With what this book was, I don't think that it needed to be 650 pages. We definitely could have got all of this in less pages, or I feel if it was going to be over 650 pages, it doesn't need to be a trilogy. Because I don't think with the way that this ended, we don't need 2 other books, but that's just what I think. But I did not like how repetitive some of the information was. We just didn't need to get some of the information twice. I also didn't like how quickly we were jumping from perspective to perspective in different scenes. And it was hard at sometimes to connect with different characters within those scenes because you were jumping from them so fast. It kept pulling me out of the story because I would want to see what was happening with this person, but then you would have to go back and then read about 2, 3, 4 other people before you jump back to the other person. And then by then I probably forgot what we were doing with this person before we got back over there. So I didn't like that. And it didn't happen all the time. It was just in certain spots. So I didn't care for that. And my biggest problem that I had with this book was I felt like we were supposed to focus on these children and their talents. And yeah, we knew what their talents were. And especially with like Charlie and Marlo, they explained what their talents were. In the beginning, when Alice and Colton went to go pick them up, we saw their talents in action. Ooh, wow, got it, okay. But then when they got to Carndale, we didn't really see their talents again until towards the end. Mind you, I told you this book was 650 pages. That's a lot of pages to go through before I see somebody's talent again. I wish that I could have seen more of what they did and have their talents in action, because we didn't really get to see a lot of that. I think we probably saw more of Charlie talent in action, but I mean, his wasn't all that interesting to me. How many times have we seen people regenerate? His just wasn't his talent just wasn't all that interesting to me. The other talents that I had mentioned that were also in this story, so the dust worker girl, the one that was an invisible, I mean, she was invisible most of the story, but that's not really, oh, okay, you're invisible, but that wasn't that interesting either. And then the one that can do the dust, I mean, she did it a few times, but I just feel like the children weren't using their talents like I would think that they would. And then we're at an institute that houses talents, but we didn't see any other children with talents. So we heard like a name or two throughout the story, but we didn't see like anybody else's talent. Like we didn't hear, oh, Johnny over here can do this and Susan over here can do this. Like we didn't hear any of that. If we did, I missed it. And I wish we could have like seen and heard about the other children's talents throughout the book. Maybe that's something we'll get in books 2 or 3, I would hope. But I definitely wish that we could have gotten more of what the other children's talents were throughout this story. Of course, there were some other things that happened. We got a lot of other information. You know, some things went down at the school, but those were my primary likes and dislikes about the story overall. Will I continue on with this? I still don't know. This did end with a lot of questions, but I don't really know if I need answers to them. I just don't know if I needed answers. I thought my reading experience with this book was tiresome. It just was a lot. My biggest problem with this book was it just did not need to be as long as it was. I don't know why this book was 650 pages. I don't know why this is going to be a trilogy. I will stand by that. I think with as long as this book was and what this book was about, we could have wrapped this thing up in one book. But that's my opinion. At this point, with where it stands, depending on what people say about book 2, which I don't think that we're supposed to even get book 2 until 2024, that will determine whether or not I pick it up. Because at this point, I don't know. I did want to finish this book because I was just so curious on what was going to happen. But I just don't know if I am curious enough to want to pick up another 600-page book about this. But that is all that I have to say about Ordinary Monsters. Overall, I did give it a 3 stars. I thought it was fine. You know, I did like some things. I was not happy with some things. So I just settled right in the middle with how I felt about this one. It was fine. It was a 3 stars. I am so curious. If you guys have read this book, please, please, please let me know what you guys thought about this book. And if you have read it, please let me know if you plan on picking up the next books in the series. But that is all that I have for you guys, and I will see you guys next time. Bye.